Hello everyone, so I wanted to try out another game of Brethren as a follow-up to a video that I put up a week or two ago now. The author of the rules, Matthew Sutton O'Connor, actually watched the video, and I've been communicating with him through some comments on his own YouTube channel, and there are a number of things that came out of that he found useful, and what he's going to do is put up an errata page on his website for Brethren. So the website's called, I think it's called Brethren Skirmish Tabletop Wargame. It's very easy to find anyway. So as always, there are a number of things that I got wrong in the rules. So to address those first of all, the main one that I got wrong was that I questioned the worth of giving a figure a weapon in each hand, but that is actually covered in the rules. There's a cost that you pay for the second hand weapon, and you get to, I think the rule is that if you have a weapon in each hand, you get to re-roll one of the failed hits in combat. So hopefully that will occur in the game I'm going to play with you today. Most of the other things were errors and typos and omissions in the rules. I don't really want to go too much into detail, and I want to get on with this bat rep, but very briefly, any figure can be killed, or can be wounded rather, on a roll of a 6, so you can't, a defense of 6 doesn't protect you from a roll of 6, which makes sense, and it's still worth buying a shield because there are weapons that reduce your defense factor. So it's possible that a figure that has a defense of 6 can be brought down to a defense of 5, so it is still worth having a shield to prevent that figure being taken down to a defense of 4, if you see what I mean. What else? I made some notes, sorry, just so I can get through this as quickly as possible. The morale, I think, is basically you select an enemy from within 6 inches of a friendly hero, and if you don't have a hero, you can't impose morale checks on the enemy. But that's slightly different, that clarification is slightly different from the way it's worded, because in the book it's worded that you select a unit within 6 inches of the unit that you selected, so it's still, it makes sense now, but the wording is still a little bit vague, even if you take it that you're selecting from your own hero. The housecarls, which were costed as 18 points in the army supplement book, should indeed have been more expensive, so they are actually 20 points each as the basic cost without their weapons, and that is relevant today because the game I'm going to be playing is a game between the Normans, some of whom you can see in front of you, and Anglo Saxons. And finally, when a figure is engaged, it is no longer able to activate, and that has two implications. I question why it wasn't allowed that you could charge within 3 inches, and Matthew says that's because it was found to be an overpowered ability, and also it means the way that he's worded that clarification, it means that once you are engaged, as it were, so you're in base-to-base contact, you can't activate that figure at all unless it was charged. I think that is the intention of the wording, but that is the way I'm going to play it today. So anyway, let's get on with this game before I waffle on too much. I'm trying out large forces on both sides. So I've actually got, well, it started off with the Normans being 1,322 points and the Saxons 1,326. But for that, you can go up to 1,500. 1,500 points is the maximum that the game kind of accommodates. But for that number of points, you should really have at least 5 heroes on the table. So I've added, I only had 4, I think it was 4, yeah, on the Norman side. So I've thrown in very late in the day a 5th hero on the Norman side, as the Saxons have, you'll see in a moment, have 5 heroes themselves. So that would actually put the Normans up over that 1,322 points that they started with. But I think it's necessary because in this game you move figures individually, but the heroes allow you to give group orders, and when you've got this many figures on the table, I've got 44, well it'd be 45 Norman figures now, and 56 Saxons. If you're going to move all of those individually, then it's going to take forever. So I'm not going to film every single step of this back rep, you'll be pleased to hear. But also the heroes allow group moves, so it'll get the figures moved more quickly the more heroes you have on the table. So let's just take you on a little guided tour of the battlefield. So for this number of figures you have to have a 6 by 3 table, and I'm playing the scenario, I think it's called All Out War, where you basically have to reduce the enemies down to 20% of their original strength. And I'm playing it in a kind of moorland sort of terrain. So I've got these kind of patches of gorse on the table again. I'm going to treat those today as though they are woodland. So they slow down cavalry, don't slow down infantry, but give significant cover defence if you're in them, and that includes the cross in the middle there. I'm going to treat that as though it's gorse, and then I've got a few of these sort of dead trees and tree stump type. There's another one there. Bits of scenery that are just going to act as cover kind of things. If you're standing behind them, give you a little bit of protection from missile fire. Now, on the Norman side, we have oh gosh, quite a lot of figures. So I've got warriors, mounted warriors with spears and shields, and also lots of bowmen who are levy, so levy unarmoured bowmen, and armoured warriors on horseback. So there's more levy bowmen, and there's a lot more armoured warriors on horseback with sword and shield. So pretty uniform weaponry there. There are, as I say, 5 heroes on the table. So I've got 3 combat heroes. This is one of them there. There's another one here. He's armed with a mace and shield. The other one was armed with a sword and shield and on horseback. Got another one here, another combat hero here. They're all melee specialists, I'm going to call the combat heroes. This guy here is a support hero with a standard. That chap there, although he's not actually got a sword in his hand, I'm saying it is armed with a sword. And the last combat hero is over here, this chap. He's armed with, well, it's a club, but there isn't a definition of a club. Strangely, actually, because the Normans were, especially the religious type fighters in Norman armies, did often carry a club rather than a mace, but it isn't listed in the weapons book. And on that subject, I might as well take you over to the in that refrain. I might as well take you over to the Saxon side to talk about another figure over on the Saxon side. Yeah, you can see a figure there. I'm going to use him as a support hero, and one of the things I really like about this set of rules is it's what you see is what you get. So he is clearly blowing a horn, so he's going to be a support hero, sort of inspirational hero they're called, who can affect the enemy morale with his horn. But he's got a shield and a spear in the other hand. For some reason, Matthew's left out the spear in the equipment that's available for support heroes. I don't understand why. So I've just costed a spear for him, and it's not on a mission. Matthew actually said, in an exchange of comments, that you can make your own factions up, but that's the way it is. So anyway, if I sort of pan along the Anglo-Saxon line, so I've got some feared there. The housecarls in the front rank, supported by feared in the back with spears. Some feared bow. More feared there with a variety of again, they've got this sort of strain. They're Wargames Foundry figures. They've got a sort of club-like weapon, so I'm calling that a mace as well. Then I've got the house carls again, and remember these should be costed at 20 points and not 18. Behind them is a combat hero on horseback, armed with shield and sword. There was one that we went past earlier. I won't take the camera back. That guy there is going to be my inspirational priest, battle priest, which is allowed in the Anglo-Saxon faction. Again, there's a little bit of an error in the army supplement book, in that Matthew's written, see the monk profile for details, and the monk can be kind of upgraded to a battle priest, but the monk was what he was going to call all the support heroes in originally, and he changed his mind sensibly, I think, because it allows you to put non-clerical heroes, support heroes, onto the table, like that hornblower that you saw earlier. So what was saying? Yeah, ignore, if you read that in this, if you do get the supplement book and read monk, ignore monk. It's just support hero it should read. Got more housecarls there. armed with mainly shields or defended with shields and armed with spears. Then more feared with bows. What are they? More housecarls, just with single-handed axes, and in the back they're supported by feared with spears, and over there feared with spears and shields. Right, okay, so I'm going to get on with the game. I'm not going to show you every step of it, otherwise it will be a very, very long video indeed. So I'll probably show you the outcome of the end of the sort of movement phase, as it were. Right, so I'm not through moving all the figures yet, but I've come to this point now where this group of Norman bowmen here are going to, they've moved once but with a group order, so they all move together, but having done that they are allowed to either prepare or to loose. So I'm going to order them to loose, and they're going to use a faction ability, which is volley, which I'm not entirely sure I'm going to do this correctly, but it will be, you know, sort of a useful experiment with the rules. So the faction order volley says that the order is given to any unit with a ranged weapon. Select an enemy unit in line of sight. All enemies within 6 inches of that unit can be targeted. If in range, all units given the volley order roll their ranged attack dice. All attack dice are given a +1 modifier. The defender rolls a single dice for all targeted units. Any hits that successfully wound can be assigned to any targeted enemy unit. So, in other words, that means I'm rolling 6, because there are 6 figures, 6 attack dice, and the Saxons are only going to be rolling 1 dice. So it's a little bit dice dependent, this, but if the Saxons roll low, it's going to mean a lot of hits on that Saxon body. Okay, here we go. So it's 6 dice against 1, adding +1 to the. Wow, yeah, that is devastating, because the 6s can't be increased anymore, but all there are 4 5s, they all go up to 6, so that's 6 6s against the 1. That couldn't have been any worse for the Saxons. So let's just work out. I think now I can apply wounds to any figures I like. Just check that in the book. Yeah, what I have to do now is roll all the successful dice, so in other words all 6 of them, against the target's defense value. So I think it's too good an opportunity to miss, to roll all 6. I suppose I could split them, but I don't want to take the risk. I want to try and kill this command hero here, who has a defense of 5, because he starts up with 4, but he's got a shield that takes him up to 5. And I was originally targeting that unit there, so he is easily within 6 inches. So I'm going to roll all 6 dice and try and beat 5. He's actually got 3. Oh no, beg your pardon. He's got 4 health because he's on horseback. So I need to get 4 6s in order to kill him. Otherwise, I'll inflict wounds on him. Right, see if I can do the same type of lucky roll again. So I need 6s, and I've only got 1, but at least that is 1 wound on that Saxon hero. Right, so I'll put a casualty marker against that chap and carry on with moving the figures. Okay, so at the end of the turn, now done all the movements and there are no figures in contact with one another, so there won't be any combat, and also no figures actually killed, despite a great deal of arrows being exchanged, bows firing at one or shooting at one another. One thing I would say at this point is that I was expecting the game to really get bogged down because it's individual figure movement and alternate movement at that, but in fact it does really help to have a lot of heroes on the table, because they can then give group orders to figures within 6 inches of one another, and you'll get at the end of that process, you'll get quite a lot of figures that are surplus that have to be moved individually, but that happens a lot more rapidly, especially once one side has completed all its movements. Then you can then move absolutely everything else on the opposing side quite rapidly. So the game has gone quite sort of smoothly at the moment. So that's more or less where we are, and also they've moved across the table very quickly as well, and that's not just a function of a lot of them being mounted, but also that priest, the inspirational battle priest, is able to give additional distance to the orders as well, so everything is moving together quite quickly. So anyway, I'm going to move on to turn 2 and just give you a kind of edited highlight version of each turn. Yeah, one thing I ought to say at this point before I carry on though, I'm bound to forget things, and I have forgotten or overlooked one thing already which would have had a significant impact on that last turn, so I can't go back now and rectify it. But the Normans have a faction ability which is organised cavalry, which is when first activated in the first turn, any units equipped with a horse can make a free move action. So in other words, it would have been very easy indeed for instance, these cavalry to have reached these Saxons here, so there would have been combat. I'm just going to have to remember that for the next game now. But there are a lot of adjustments you have to make for faction abilities and the abilities of the individual heroes and so on, and you're only really going to get accustomed to that with constant play. So apologies for making that mistake. Certainly worked to the detriment of the Normans, but we're just going to have to live with that. So on to the next turn. Right, so we're now at the end of the movement phase, but I haven't got onto the combat phase yet. I thought I'd just show you where we are. So in that movement phase there was a lot of missile fire which did actually have an impact this time. So you can see, for instance, just there's a dead Norman mounted warrior. Some of these combats are the result of charges, and some of them are just the result of movement up to contact, so I'll have to remember that when I start to resolve the combats. But going down the line here now, you can see awful lot of contact. Couple of dead house cars there because they had a failed charge. They didn't get into contact with the enemy, and as a result their defence was weakened, and the Normans took advantage of that to shoot at them from these units here, and use their volley ability as well, which meant that two of the housecarls ended up pierced by arrows. over here, this scrum here is the result of a Norman charge. So there's a lot of individual fights there to be resolved now, and the battlefield over here is littered with the bodies of dead Norman and Saxon archers from the exchange of missile fire. But the other two, all the other units over here are a long way out of making contact with the opposing side. So anyway, I'm going to, rather than do it on camera, because there's a lot of individual dice rolling to do now, I'll go through the whole lot and then give you that same viewpoint, showing you the result of all the casualties. Right then, so all the rounds of combat have now taken place, and there are a lot more dead figures on the table since the previous phase. Over here, not surprisingly, the Norman knights have done very well against the Anglo-Saxon bowmen. Over here, less of a bloody fight. There was only one actual casualty, a Saxon housecarl killed there, but everything else just retreated when it lost the round of combat. Wasn't actually there weren't actually dice rolls that broke or exceeded the defense of the defeated figure, so they just, each time they just had to withdraw 1 inch. But overall, for that turn, the Normans have only lost 3 figures killed. Some of them from missile fire, in fact all of them from missile fire, whereas the Saxons have lost a total of 10. So that means that if I can find, I'm sure I can, eligible figures within 6 inches of a Norman hero, I can ask them to take a morale check. So I'm just going to have an overview of the battlefield now and then show you the results of the morale check. Right, well, it's got to be over this side here, so I look for a figure within 6 inches of this hero here, so I'm going to pick this Saxon hero here. It doesn't have to be, it has to be any unit on the opposing side. So I think that's slightly miswritten in the rules, because it says 6 inches from any hero and then 6 inches from that. That's the way I read it. There's a sort of duplication, but I'm sure what it means is you take a figure that's 6 inches from one of your heroes, then any figure that's within 6 inches of that, and this is a lot, it's all these figures here, these two that are nearly off frame here up to that hero there, have to take morale checks. So let's start here and work our way down. So all these figures are either going to have a morale of 10 or 7 depending on their quality. This guy is a 10, so I've rolled 7 for him. I'm afraid you can't see the dice rolls on camera. I'll just tell you, this guy here is a 7 and I rolled 5 for him, so he's fine. This is a 7 and I rolled 8 for him, so he comes off the table. This guy's a 10 and I rolled 8, so that's fine. This chap is a 10 and I rolled 6. This is a 7 and I rolled 6. This chap is a 7 and I rolled 5, 7 and I rolled 9, so he leaves the table. 7, and I roll 3, 7, and I roll 3, 7, and I roll 9, so he leaves the table. 7, and I roll 2, and then I've got, just off camera, sorry, down here, these are 10s, so this is a 10, and I roll 10, so that's just snuck it in. 10, and I roll 4, 10, and I roll 9, 10, and I roll 8. So that is the end of the turn. So the Saxons have done extremely badly in that turn. I did manage, by the way, to remember to use some of the faction special abilities over here. So this guy now, he was a melee specialist, and despite that giving them a lot more dice to roll over there, they still only ended up with one dead over there. But yeah, my impression of these rules is I really like the granularity of them, that each of those base-to-base contacts, you know, involved separate factors, because they were possibly carrying different weapons, different circumstances of charging or having prepared and that kind of thing, did make each base-to-base contact combat individual. So there was a lot of factors to take into account, especially with faction abilities or hero abilities coming into play as well. So it was slightly complicated to do, but I enjoyed it. I enjoyed that granularity to it. But at the same time, until you get used to a set of rules, I in particular do find it very easy to overlook certain rules that are applicable that I just don't apply. But yeah, really, really good fun. Although I didn't show you the dice rolls because they took a long time. A really good, enjoyable, immersive turn that was, full of drama and narrative. Okay, on to the next. Right, so after the end of the movement phase, just about everything is engaged somewhere along the battle line. There was a little bit of missile fire, but no kills during that. So now it's just a matter of doing the same thing again, which I'll do off camera, and resolve all these individual combats. So that gives you an impression really of how many different situations there are. So quite a lot of dice rolling. I might show some of it, I don't know, I might show some of it just to give you a feel for how the combat mechanism works again, but I would recommend that you watch my previous Brethren battle report. So I'll get on with that, and then when I get to maybe the centre section, I'll give you a little bit of the dice rolling as well. Okay, I'm just working my way along the line, and not surprisingly, the mounted Normans, armoured warriors, are doing quite well against the unarmoured feared, so they've already got 3 kills. And then I'm just going to deal now with this individual battle between these 2 figures here. So in this case, the Housecarl did charge at that mounted figure there. So normally he would have 2 attack dice, but for a successful charge he gets an extra attack dice. That gives him 3. The Norman, on the other hand, starts with 3 attack dice. He would, I didn't do it, but I shall do it for the sake of demonstration, he would have had the ability to prepare against the charge because he hadn't moved. So that will give him a +1 on the dice roll, I believe. +1 modifier to their attack rolls. Yeah, so they're both the figures are rolling 3 dice and adding 1 to their dice rolls. The Norman because he prepared, and the housecarl because he's a trained warrior with a sword. So I'm rolling blue for Normans, white for Anglo-Saxons, adding 1 to all these dice rolls. Yeah, let's roll it and see what we get. So 1 goes up to 2, 5 goes up to 6, the 6 there can't be increased any higher, 3 goes up to 4, 2 goes up to 3, and 2 goes up to 3. So that means that those 2 6s on the Anglo-Saxon side are successful. Nothing else is successful. So those 2 successful dice I now roll against the Norman's defence value. So he would normally have a defence of 3, but he's equipped with a shield. That puts him up to a defence of 4, so I have to beat 4 in order to inflict a wound on him, and he only has 1 health, so a 5 or a 6 will kill him, and I fail. So as he lost the melee but wasn't killed, he has to pull back 1 inch, and then we're going to deal with this. Yeah, I think you can see that situation there. Similar, except that in this case the housecarl has another figure behind him armed with a spear which can lend support. So the this time the housecarl is rolling an additional dice, but this is the way I interpret the rule. He gets +1 to his dice rolls for wielding the sword, but doesn't get +1 for the additional dice offered by the support from the spear. So you have to, I think I pointed this out on my previous video, but I think the way I'm playing the game is that you have to roll separately for those 2 weapon types. So here we go. Okay, start with a single dice roll for the spear. So that's just the 1, it's pretty pathetic. And then all the other dice, 3 dice on each side, and they're all adding 1s. The Saxon because he's wielding a sword, and the Norman because he would have been able to prepare. So 5 goes up to 6, 4 goes up to 5, 3 goes up to 4, 4 goes up to 5, 4 goes up to 5, and 3 goes up to 4. And then we put that 1 back in the mix, but it's not going to matter at all. So the 6 means that the Norman has won the melee. The highest dice on the losing side is a 5, so that negates everything from the 5 down. That means that there's only 1 successful dice from the Norman's point of view, and the house, so he attempts to roll against the housecarl's defence, and the housecarl has a defence of 4 with an added point for carrying a shield. Therefore the Norman has to roll a 6 to kill him, and he fails. So again, that figure has to retreat. So he has to pull back 1 inch, but he has a figure behind him. Now one figure behind means that that figure also pulls back 1 inch. If there'd been more, there would have been another round of melee with the housecarl at a disadvantage. But that's how the melees work. I'll do one more just to give you another little example, but you can see doing this sometimes dozens of times in the course of a round is very labour intensive, if you like. I like it because it's each fight is a little story in its own right, but doesn't make for particularly good YouTube viewing. Okay, so next along the line we've got 2 housecarls who charged against this character here, who is actually a melee specialist. So I think what I'm going to do is call into play his special ability that he can use just once in the game. So that will give you a little bit more of an example. Okay, so the special ability, because he's a melee specialist, allows him once in the game to roll an additional 3 attack dice in a combat, and he actually rolls 5 anyway. That means he's rolling 8 dice, and he would have prepared, so that means he's rolling 8 dice at a +1 modifier. The 2 housecarls roll 2 dice each, but +1 for each for attacking with a +1 modifier. That means they're rolling 6 dice with a +1 modifier. But the Norman ability as well, later on, not during this rolling of the dice, but later, allows them, just for that once per game, to give an extra attack dice to another 3 figures within 12 inches. So I'm going to do that in further combats that I'm probably not going to show you, otherwise this video would take an extremely long time. Okay, here we go then. So blue for Normans, white for Anglo-Saxons, +1 to all the dice. So there's a 6 there that can't be increased, but the 5 will go up to 6, and 4 will go up to 5. I'm not going to bother with any of the others because I can see that the Normans, the Anglo-Saxons would have countered them, but the Anglo-Saxon 4s go up to 5s, and again same thing, these can all be discarded. So we've got the 5s there negate that Norman 5, so we've got 2 successful Norman hits. Now in this case, I'm not sure what you do. I think you can either inflict both, make 2 attempts against 1 defense, or I'm just going to say, I'm not going to specify, just roll the 2 dice, and I've got to beat I've got to get 6s effectively in order to beat the defense. Yeah, that's right. I don't think you have to specify which dice is being rolled against which figure. So if I get 2 successes, I'm going to kill off both the housecarls, but that's not likely to happen. Yeah, in fact I've got 2 misses, so once again those 2 figures have to pull back. So there we are, those 2 figures go back. So no one killed in conflict at the moment. I'm going to, apart from the ones that I did before that I haven't shown you, didn't show you the dice rolling. So I'm going to carry on like that now. I'm not going to show you the entire battle line, but that's basically the way the mechanisms for combat happen. Well, just to show you that it can happen, the very next combat that took place, the Saxon hero killed the Norman warrior that he was fighting. So it can happen. Oh no, hang on, made a mistake there. Because being on horseback gives him 2 health. So in fact, he pulls back an inch and gets 1 casualty token. So mistake on camera there. Right then, so at the end of all the various fights, the Normans have 5 dead on the field, mainly those bowmen up that end, but the Anglo-Saxons have 7 dead, and that means that the Normans can once again pick a figure to take morale checks. So I'll just work out where that's going to be. Yeah, I'm going to go for over here again. So I've got a Norman hero here, so he's going to select that same Saxon hero there, which means everything from there that way that is Saxon has to roll a morale check. So it's either going to be 10s or 7s depending on the quality. So I'll start with this hero here. Again, you won't see the dice roll, but I'll just tell you what it is as I go. So he's rolled a 3, so he's fine. This one here has rolled a 5, so he's fine. This one here has rolled a 9, so he just does it. So he's got the roll of 10. This one here, I always forget whether I've called him... oh no, he's got morale of 10 because he's a hero. Yeah, he does it. Chap in front of him is fine. This bowman here just does it, rolls a 7. The hero here does it, manages. I don't think I've done him yet. He's fine. This chap here is fine. And this chap here is fine. So nothing off for morale purposes. Right, there we are at the end of the next movement phase, and it's just boiled down now, this whole game, to a big scrum right the way across the table, which I really like the appearance of. Very little missile fire now. What there was desultory and didn't cause any casualties, so now it's back to the same business of working out the individual combats. I don't know whether I said at the beginning, but I'm playing the all-out war scenario, so I've got to get the one side or the other has got to fall below 20% of its original strength, so neither side is anywhere close to that yet. But on that subject, one of the factors, one of the powers of the Anglo-Saxons would have been to form shield wall, but for this scenario I didn't really think of using it because it's very defensive formation obviously, and the aim of both sides was to get across the table and injure and wound the other. So shield wall I could have played. It did, I was aware that it was there as an ability I could use, but I haven't used it. That's just to explain what's going on there. So I'm going to resolve all these little individual conflicts and get back to you at the end of that. The fighting then is just beginning to shift a little bit towards the Anglo-Saxons' favour. Both sides have lost 4 killed in that round, so neither side will take a morale check. So it's straight on to the next turn. Yeah, really enjoying this. It's turning into a kind of classic scrum down to individual actions. I love the kind of granularity, I think I've used that word already, of it, that, you know, each little combat is has its own flavour. There's a lot of nuances in the type of weapons that are being used and so on, so you do have to get to know the abilities of the weapons and the dice and the factors that you have to use for each one. But as the game goes on, you get more fluid with it. You get to play a lot faster. So I'm not showing you a lot of the dice rolls because it would still consume a lot of time, as there are so many figures on the table. But yeah, I just think the visual look of it now is great. I'm not at all sure which side is going to come out the victor. You know, there's still a lot to play for. In this area of the table you're looking at the moment is quite evenly balanced, but then you've got an area in the middle here, this area here involving the inspirational priest. The Anglo-Saxons are very nearly wiped out there, but just beyond that is an area where the Anglo-Saxons definitely have the upper hand. So yeah, I'm just going to run through all the combats now, and I'll give you another update on what's happening. Well, at the end of this turn, the Normans have lost 5 dead to the Anglo-Saxons 4. So for the first time in the game, it's the Normans who are going to have to take a morale check. It has broken down into a game of 3 parts, really. Over here, Normans are really in trouble, surrounded by Anglo-Saxon warriors now, whereas in this middle sector here, the Anglo-Saxons are all but wiped out, including the inspirational priest, who you can see there has taken 4 wounds, which is sufficient to kill him now. And in this sector here, I would say sort of pretty evenly balanced. Probably the Normans have got the upper hand. So very balanced game still, but I'm now going to decide where it's best for the Normans to be compelled to take their morale check. Yeah, I really have to do it up this end of the table because I've got this hero character here who is also equipped with a horn, which reduces the enemy morale down by 1. So if I pick this Norman character here and do everything within 6 inches of him, everything that is within 6 inches of him is also within 6 inches of him that needs to, so I can take 1 off of the morale of everything. So if we start here, he had a morale of 10, so that would go down to, or did he? Let me just check that. Yeah, lucky I checked that, because he only has a morale of 9, so that would go down to 8, and he rolls a 10, so he's off the table. Normand here, same again there. He's fine. This guy here has a morale of 10, so that goes down to 9. He's fine. 9 goes down to 8, and he rolls a 10, so he's off the table. 9 goes down to 8, and he rolls a 6, so he's fine. I think, yeah, you can still see that. 9 goes down to 8, and he rolls a 5, so he's fine. And as far as I can see, that is all the Normans in that area. So not really down to anywhere near 20% on either side yet. So carrying on now with the next turn. few casualties from arrows, so now it's a matter just of resolving the conflict. So I'll do all that off camera again, but just to show you the situation. I mean, this Norman hero here is surrounded by Anglo-Saxon feared, but the Normans from the centre of the table are beginning to press across to try and come to his aid. Over here there's just a few Anglo-Saxons that the Normans need to finish off, and at the other end of the table, yeah, I'd still say it's pretty evenly balanced. Lots of little individual combats going on over there. Okay, well, the Anglo-Saxons suffered the most casualties in that round, including, I forgot to point it out earlier, but he was killed by missile fire. That's the hornblower, so that's a bit of a loss. And down here, although the Normans are doing quite badly in that corner, the Norman hero lost that combat but wasn't actually injured, remarkably. So he's got quite strong defence, so he just had to withdraw an inch. So it's the Normans who can choose where the Saxons have to take a morale check. So I'm going to pick this area here simply because there's a lot of fairly low morale characters here, and there's a possibility of removing quite a lot of them from the table, in which case the Normans are quite close to victory, I would think. So what should we say? I'm going to pick this figure here and roll morale for everything within 6 inches of him. Okay, so it's going to be either 10s or 7s depending on which troop type it is. So this one is a 10 and he rolls 8. This guy is a 10, he rolls 7. This guy is a 10, he rolls 4. This chap is a 10, he rolls 8. Now all the others I think are 7s. So this chap here rolls a 6. This chap here rolls a 5. This chap here rolls an 8, so he comes off. This chap here rolls a 2. This chap here 5. This chap here 10, so he's off. And this chap here 3, so he stays on the table. So the fight goes on. Both sides still a long way off being reduced to 20%. So there's going to be quite a few more turns to this game yet, but really enjoying this. I'm taking my time, you know, studying the rules, so this video isn't really a good tutorial on how to play this game because I'm doing most of the thinking off camera, so it's more of a classic bat rep, but it's pretty close. I'd say the Normans probably have the edge, just in terms of the number of figures they've got left on the table, but the dice might change, you never know, in favour of the Anglo-Saxons. End of the movement phase. One Saxon archer brought down by Norman arrows, and everything else engaged in one part or another in melee. And at the end of that turn, 3 dead on each side, so no morale check, so just carry on with the fighting. Okay, as the number of figures on the table is being reduced now, I'll show you some of the dice rolling give you an entire round of combat, so you can get an idea of the mechanisms a bit better. So you can see there one figure who was brought down by Norman arrows, but everything else now is involved in some kind of fight, individual combat. So we'll start here. We've got a Saxon hero figure who's got 4 attack dice. He's armed with a sword, so he gets +1 to his rolls to hit, and he's fighting a straightforward Norman warrior who rolls 3 dice. Blue for Norman. Okay, so I can see straight away I'm adding +1 to all the white dice, but that's just going to leave those 2 successful 5s, which become 6s, as hits. So the Norman knight has a shield, so his defense is 4. He starts with a defense 3, goes up to 4 because he's got a shield. He's already got 1 wound, which means 5 or 6 will kill him. And there's a 5, so he dies. Okay, so we'll just put him on his side for the moment because we have to keep track of this at the end of the turn. Number of casualties, and we'll go on to this fight here, which is between a Norman on horseback and a Saxon housecarl with a sword. So the housecarl will roll 2 dice, +1s to his dice rolls, and the Norman is going to be rolling 3 without any modification. So the 4 will go up to 5, but that's not going to beat those 2 6s. So this time the Norman has 2 successful hits, and the housecarl has a shield. So again, the housecarls they're more expensive. 20 points, remember, not 18 as it says in the book, but they have a better defense of 4, and with the shield that goes up to 5, so 6s will kill him, otherwise he just withdraws an inch, and there's a 6, so he dies. Okay, so we put him on his side, and we go on to this next fight here, where the Norman hero is badly outnumbered here. He's got, well, he will start off with 5 attack dice, and because he's armed with a sword, it's +1s to hit. But he's got 2 housecarls who have 2 attack dice each, +1s to hit. He has a Saxon combat hero who has 4 attack dice, again +1s to hit because he's got a sword, and then in support is a chap with a feared member with a spear who can add 1 dice to the mix. So it's 9 dice against 5. All but 1 of the 9 dice can add 1 to the hits. So we'll do that 1 dice first of all. Right, so that's a 1, so it's not likely to have any effect on the outcome. And then everything else we're adding 1s to. So there's a 6 there. So anything other than 5s and 6s we can take out. So the 5s go up to 6, so we have to re-roll these 3 dice. Good. And this time there are 2 equal dice there, so we re-roll those. And the Normans have it. So Normans can effectively choose who they're going to try and injure. So I'm going to attempt to break the defence of one of the housecarls with a shield, who therefore has a defence of 5. So a 6 will kill the housecarl, otherwise all those figures that were involved in the melee pull back 1 inch, and it's a 3. Okay, so absolutely all 4 of the attackers have to pull back 1 inch, and then we move on to this conflict here, which where the Norman is badly outnumbered. He's being attacked by 3 housecarls with Dane axes, so they will 4 attack dice each, so that's going to need 12 Anglo-Saxon dice. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. No modifiers to the attack roll though, and the Norman has just got 3 dice, so it's, and again no modifiers, so it's 12 against 3. So there are 6s, and the highest Norman dice is a 4, so any 6s and 5s on the Anglo-Saxon side are successful hits, which is quite a lot. 5 dice, and the Norman has a defence of 4. 3 plus 1 for his shield is 4, so 5s and 6s will kill, and he's already got 1 wound, so just 1 5 or 6 is enough to kill him. But no, there is nothing there, so he just has to pull back 1 inch. So we move him back 1 inch, and then the next conflicts are over by the cross here. So we've got a Norman warrior supported by another Norman warrior with a spear, so the spear can lend support, so that is 3 dice for the Norman, extra attack dice for the support, against the housecarl who's armed with a spear, so he just has 2 dice, so it's 4 against 2. And there's a 6 on each side, so everything else gets taken out and we re-roll the 6s. And the Anglo-Saxon has it with a 5. So again has to get a 5 or a 6 to wound him, and he only gets a 3. So the support and the Norman get pushed back 1 inch, and then here we have 2 against 1 now, so that is 6 dice against 2. No modifiers. But look at that, the Anglo-Saxon's got 2 6s and the Normans have nothing to match it, so here I suppose if I get successful hits, successful wounds, I can either choose to take, well, let's see what happens. So I need 5s or 6s to wound. Don't get it. Once again, the loser just pulls back 1 inch, and 2 figures go back 1 inch. And over here, we've got a Norman 3 attack dice against an Anglo-Saxon feared with just 1 attack dice. No modifiers. Oh, and the Anglo-Saxon's done it. He's got highest dice roll. So 5 or 6 to wound. No. So the Norman is pushed back 1 inch. So here we have a slightly different situation because there's a feared member with a spear in support. So this, in this case, it's 3 dice against 2. No modifiers. There are 2 6s, one on each side there, so everything else comes off. And we re-roll those. And the Norman has won it by 5 to 4. So the feared member has a defence of 3, 2 plus 1 for the shield, and the Norman inflicts a wound which is sufficient to kill that feared member. So he dies. Over here, right next, there's a slightly unfair fight here. 3 against 1. Can you see that? Where are we? There we are, here. 3 dice against 1. And all 3 Norman dice have beaten the Anglo-Saxon 1, so that is 3 successful hits. So we see if it wounds now, so we've got to overcome a defence of 3. So that 6 is sufficient to kill the feared member. So he also dies. Right, then here we have Norman Knight, or Norman, sorry, there are Norman Knights in the list. None of these are knights. They're just armoured warriors on horseback against the hero there, who I think rolls 4 dice. I'll just have to check that. Oh no, he only rolls 2 attack dice, but he's got a health of 2. So it's 3 dice against 2. And I'm saying that the Anglo-Saxon is fighting with a sword, which means that he adds +1 to his dice roll. Doesn't need to though, because he's rolled 2 6s. Okay, so what was it? 5s or 6 to wound? No. So the Norman gets moved back an inch, and then we've got this situation here, which is the Norman hero. He's a melee specialist, so he rolls 5 dice. +1 to hit because he's fighting with a sword, and there's also another Norman on horseback there who's going to roll another 3 dice, and they're fighting a housecarl with an axe, so he would have 2 attack dice, but he gets an extra attack dice for fighting with an axe. So we have to be a little bit careful here about how we roll these dice. I'll show you why in a second. Okay, so I'm going to start with just rolling the Anglo-Saxon's dice. So he's got 2 6s and a 2. I'm just going to take them out of the tray for a moment. Right, then we're going to roll the Norman on horseback. So he's got a 6, a 4 and a 3. So we know immediately that only when I roll these other 5 dice for the Norman hero, 5s get made up to 6s, so 5s and 6s are going to matter. Everything else we can take out. So there are 2 6s there. So we end up with a situation where there are 3 Norman 6s and 2 Anglo-Saxon 6s, so we have to re-roll those. At this point, this is a good example here really of how you should keep track of Yeah, I've forgotten already which of those sixes came. So I'm just going to say that they can all add +1 to the Norman roll. So Anglo-Saxons get a 6, but those two 5s we can add +1 to. Should really have kept a track of that and rolled separate coloured dice, but never mind. So we re-roll these, and again I'm going to say the Norman dice can be at +1. So here, don't have to worry about that because the Anglo-Saxons rolled 2, but there's 2 3s there that could get made up to 4s. So the housecarl has a defence of 5 because he's got a shield. Starts with 4, goes up to 5. So I've got 6s to kill him, otherwise he pulls back. And we don't get the 6s. Okay, so he gets moved back. And then the only other combat is the Norman with a club, who only rolls 4 dice against the housecarl with an axe, who is going to starts with 2 but gets 1 extra for the axe. And then behind, oh no, yeah, sorry, I was going to say behind him is in support, but there's another Norman attacking from the other direction. So it's 7 Norman dice against 3 Anglo-Saxon. Now again here we do really need to separate the 2 dice up, because the club, if it does get a hit, is -1 to the defence of the figure that it hits. So the Anglo-Saxon doesn't have any modifiers, so they have scored 3, 3 and 2. The Norman, who is just rolling 3, beats all those scores with 5, 4 and 5. And then the hero with the club beats with all 4 as well. So in other words, that is really bad news for the Anglo-Saxon. There are 4 dice which can diminish the defense down from 5 to 4. So in other words, 5s and 6s will wound. Yep, so there is 1 wound which is sufficient to kill him, but I'll just roll the other 3 as well, and 6s would have wounded him, so there's a 6. So he's only got 1 health and he's actually suffered 2 wounds, so he is killed. So that's the end of the round of combat. So now we have to see which side inflicted the most kills on the other side. Right, so there, no doubt about this round, there are 5 Saxon dead and only 1 Norman. So the Normans can require the Saxons to take a morale check, and they are going to pick, so you have to take a enemy figure that's within 6 inches of a hero. So I'm going to take this Norman hero here and pick this character here, and I reckon that everything in that area that is Saxon is within 6 inches of him. So we'll start with this guy here, who's got a morale of 7 and he rolls 10, so he's off the table. This chap here, the same, 7 and he rolls 8, so he's off the table. This chap here is 10 and he rolls 10, so he just survives. And this chap here is 10 and he rolls 10 again, so again just survives. So there's 2 figures leave the table due to morale. Okay, so we're on to another combat phase now. No casualties from missile fire, so this is how it's ended up. The only kind of game-changing thing possibly is that these Norman figures here have left the side of the table where they were winning, and they're heading over towards that fight there, which is where the Norman is vastly outnumbered by 3 housecarls with Dane axes. Miracle he's survived so far, and everywhere else there's just little individual fights going on. So let's start up this side of the table to begin with. So he had, if I remember rightly, he had 2 attack dice fighting with a sword, so +1, but he's being attacked by 3 Normans, each rolling 3 attack dice, so it's 9 against 2. So +1 to the Anglo-Saxon roll, so they got a 6 there, which has saved them because the Normans rolled 2 6s. So we just re-roll the 6s now, adding +1 to the white dice. So that goes up to 5, so the heroic Anglo-Saxon character there has actually won that fight against 3 Normans on horseback. So he's going to pick the Norman that's already been wounded once, so he needs 5 or 6 to wound. No, it doesn't do it. So those Normans have to retire an inch, so they lost the melee. And then here we have a single Anglo-Saxon housecarl with an axe, so that would be 3 attack dice against 4 attack dice from this guy and 3 from this guy. And again we have to keep the dice separate because any hits from the 4 will weaken the defence, because he's fighting with a club, which I'm defining as a mace. Okay, so we'll keep all these separate. So this is the Anglo-Saxon's roll. So he's got 6, a 3 and a 2. These are the 3 unqualified rolls. So there's a 6, a 4 and a 2. And then these are the ones, they're not modified, but we need to make sure we know which dice have potentially and it's the 5 and the 4 we have to worry about. Right, okay. Oh no, we don't have to worry about them because we're just re-rolling the 6s, beg your pardon. Okay, so there's 2 6s, and this came from the Norman on horseback who's got the spear. 2 6s, so we re-roll those. And the Normans come out on top with a 4. So that's a successful hit. So to wound it would be a 6, and it's only a 4. So the housecarl lost the melee but wasn't killed, so he just pulls back an inch. Okay, now here we've got housecarl 2 attack dice, Norman 3 attack dice, but support from behind gives him an extra dice. So 4 dice against 2, no modifiers. Norman's definitely won that, so they've got 2 5s there. So to wound, again it would be armoured, so I need 6s to wound. Yeah, there's the 6, and that means that chap is killed. So he dies because he's only got 1 health point. Right, and then here we've got housecarl rolling 2 dice against 2 Normans rolling 3 dice each. So 6 against 2. Again, no modifiers. So the Anglo-Saxons only rolled 4s, so 5s and 6s can be left as successful hits. So there's 3 successful hits. Again, Now, not sure whether I qualify. I'll call him. Yeah, he is. It's a housecarl. He's only got a helmet on, but I remember now that I did qualify him as being a housecarl armoured. Okay, so I need 6s to wound. No, rubbish. So he survives to fight again, but has to move back an inch. Okay, now over here we've got 3 housecarls armed with Dane axes, so that's 4 dice each against 3 dice for the Norman on horseback. It's a miracle this Norman has survived right through the game. He's been fighting those housecarls with Dane axes most of the game. Okay, so looks like he's finished this time though. So anything higher than a 3 is an Anglo-Saxon hit. Sorry, anything, or say anything, I think it was any 3 or higher. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I think that was right. Yeah, I'm not sure, but I think this is going to be pretty deadly. He's already got 1 wound, so 5 or 6 and he's killed. Yeah, loads of 5s, loads of 6s. So he is definitely dead. And then we go on to this fight here, where we have Norman hero rolling 5 dice, +1s to the attack roll because he's fighting with a sword, against 2 dice, 2 dice and 4 dice, so that's 8 dice +1 for the spear, so that's 9. The spear doesn't add +1 though, so we have to roll that separately. Okay, so we'll roll the spear first of all. That's a 5, not bad, and then all the rest we add +1 to. So we can discount that 5 now because it's only 6s that are going to matter. That 5 gets made up to a 6. There are no other 5s, so we've got to re-roll 3 6s. Adding +1s to everything. So the Normans win with 1 dice. Oh no, beg your pardon, 2, because the 3 beats the 2 as well. So they've got 2 hits. I think we're going to attempt to wound the 2 on foot. So they have got, that will require 6s to wound. No. So that Norman hero is fighting everything off. They all lost the melee, so everything has to pull back an inch. And then finally, we've got this fight here, which is the Saxon hero rolling 4 dice +1s because he's fighting with a sword against the Norman rolling 3 dice with no modifiers. Right, so 4 1s, so they go up to 2s, but they're not going to beat the 5 and the 3. So the Norman has got 2 hits against the hero. I'm just going to have to check what his armour is. Okay, with the shield he's got a defence of 5, so I need 6s to wound. Don't get it. So he moves back an inch. He's got 3 health by the way and just got 1 wound at the moment. So that wouldn't have killed him even if there had been 2 successes there. Right, so that's the end of all the fighting, so we'll just keep count up how many killed there are on both sides. So 1 dead on each side, so no morale check, so we go on to the next turn. Right, I've just had another turn, a movement phase, but then thought to myself, it doesn't seem to be that many Saxon figures left on the table, and when I totted it up, there's actually only 11 left, and that was 20% of the original starting strength, so that means that the Anglo-Saxons have actually lost the game. So I think I'm going to call it there rather than fight another round of combat, which is unnecessary, because the Saxons are definitely lost. But you can see what predicament they're in. They're outnumbered there, definitely outnumbered there, and then in the distance there is the 3 housecarls have been charged by those 4 Normans on horseback. There's another very one-sided conflict there, and 1-on-1 just a bit beyond it. So only 11 Saxons, so definitely the end of the game. Really enjoyed that, had a great afternoon playing that, got really immersed in it, and now I'm getting the hang of the rules as well. They make a little bit more sense. There's definitely a few errata in there, and there's still a couple of places where, you know, it's a little bit ambiguous and you could interpret something one way or the other. But I think now it's functioning really well as a game in my head. And as I say, I really like that the way the game descends down into these individual conflicts on the tabletop. It really gives me a feel for warfare in that period. That said, though, that a lot of the army lists do strike me as being set in a later period. That's not a problem in many respects, because it would work just as well for feudals, but I think really maybe the rules, the army supplement should have been, something other than Dark Ages. I think a lot of people will expect the game to concentrate on the Dark Ages, whereas you could actually, there are army lists available right up till the Mongols in the 13th century, which, I don't think there's any doubting is definitely later than the Dark Age period. This Norman warband in itself, as I said earlier, you can have knights in it, so you're really looking at the sort of feudal period as well. I mean, the knights have a feudal component to the force that they bring onto the table, so it's definitely feudal, there's no getting around it. But I'm quite excited now with the prospect. I was thinking of my Robin Hood figures that I've got, getting them painted up, because there's an army list for bandits, which would be, outlaws, bandits, call them what you will. So I could play a game once I've got those figures sorted out between Robin Hood and the Sheriff of Nottingham. So anyway, I'll stop waffling there, because even though I tried to keep it short, this has definitely gone on to another one of my epic videos. Thank you very much for watching. Really recommend this set of rules, and see you on the next video. Bye for now.